Success in your work and business life is an endeavor we should all strive for. But at what price? I believe the price is too high when the cost is your good health. This is a Ruth story. After many dedicated years of service in education, one day her health took a turn for the worst. Ruth nearly collapsed in work, and after that was off work for 18 months with a stress-related disorder, and then had to go through 18 months of therapy. Stress has been called the silent killer. How many people are one project away from a stress-related disorder? You can hear about Ruth's journey and how she recovered from that terrible time in her life in the series of LEAN MindBody Stories. Hi Ruth.
Hi.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come and share your story with us today. I know you love education and you've been in education previously for quite a long time, but your love of education took you on a journey that brought you to ill health. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So tell me, what happened?
So 25 years of teaching, was in a particular classroom one day with a group of year 11 students who had an important exam the following week. Spent the lunchtime preparing up for them for their mock exam, and some came in the classroom just didn't want to learn, and some wanted to learn and some didn't want to learn. So I went to make a phone call to have these students removed out of the classroom, and instead of making the phone call, I just found myself frozen to the spot and just crying, and my head was spinning, and going down as I'm going to drop on the floor. And one of my colleagues came out of her classroom to get a piece of paper and was able to catch me and put me somewhere safe. And as she was putting me somewhere safe, I was just crying in her arms like a little baby.
When you say your colleague caught you, was you about to faint?
I was dropping down to the ground. So I think it was just like overwhelmed with tears, anxiety, just like, my head was just really feeling lightheaded, and, just felt myself just falling onto the, towards the ground.
Had something like that ever happened before?
No. I'm a really strong person. That was a combination. It's like from the beginning of the day, the class I had first thing in the morning, they were having this debate about, am I leaving, am I staying? Because we'd have parents' evening the day before. And like one of the students would turn around and say to me, well, miss, some of us like you, which is why we're not treating you as bad as some of the other teachers we'd had before. And they thought that was fine. And, the next class, half my class was missing because I said that one of the students who was rude to me, he's not coming back until we have a meeting with his parents. So the class thought, well, it's fine that, we'll go where he is. So it was like a build up as the day went on. And, you do all the stuff, the deep breaths, keeping yourself calm. So when I went to make the phone call, I never imagined that at the end of that day, I'd be crying, not wanting to be in an environment, just like the management would just say, maybe go home and rest. For someone who's been so strong, deputy head, leadership positions, worked in challenging schools, to find myself in that position, it was just completely out of the blue.
So what was the actual cause of that episode?
So, I spent 18 months in therapy to try and get to the roots as to what happened that day. And like the therapist made me realise that I had spent 25 years in education, given, all in all, you'd go out of your way to do whatever needed to be done for the students. And now found myself working in a school where students didn't really want to learn. Management didn't want to take on board what was happening. I was the third member of staff out of my department that had gone off sick that year for something similar. And, as you say, it was just like one thing after the next. And
would you say it was stress related?
Oh, very much stress related. I mean, it's like on my medical certificate, the doctor put work related stress as the cause, because the next day I just couldn't find myself going to work, and I went to see my doctor, who I'd had for like 10 years. I'd had my doctor for a long time, and I broke down in his surgery again, and he was just concerned what had got me to that point. And when I told him what had happened the day before, he said, I can't put you back in that environment, because he knew I had a long-term medical illness, which is like lupus. And he said, if you're in this environment, it's going to trigger in your lupus. And that's what he was concerned about. So, that's why he put me off the work-related stress and just said, look, you need to go and rest.
So you were so consumed with work and investing your time and energy in work that you just came to a point, I suppose, that it just became too much for you.
Yeah, very much. It was too much, but I think it was like, I use the analogy of, when you have a frog, you put a frog in water and you turn up the heat slowly, and eventually the water's boiling, but you are in that situation, but you don't realise that you're cooked. You don't realise the situation that you're in. Whereas if you were put in that straight away, you'd know to jump out. But because the burner was slowly burning, and because I'm used to working in stress, education stressful, but this was a different type of stress, because the students had more say and more rights than the teacher, as me as a teacher, that they could tell me and do whatever it was they wanted, and there was nothing I could do. They'd be in my face and tell me, we can do what we want, and we'll just like talk to management, and they just will believe us. So to find myself in that type of situation, it was just like completely different than anything I knew.
So with the way the students were behaving and the pressures that are in education, you're saying the stress built up under the radar. You didn't feel it coming. Some people sometimes feel they got, but you didn't feel the stress coming, even though it was building up.
I didn't feel it was coming. I think like that day when I had the meltdown, it's like I felt I was stressed. I was tense. I was taking the deep breaths in and out. I felt like, I didn't feel good within myself. I was like, I was concerned that I didn't want my lupus to kick in, because I knew if it kicked in, I might not be able to walk. I didn't want to find myself in a situation that I am going to be here and have to rely on these people to get the help that I needed. So it was like I kept calming myself down, breathing in, and, I was just thinking, right, a couple of hours and you'll be whole. But, when I went to make the phone call, I'm really strong. Things have happened in my life. I don't break down. Me and crying do not go hand in hand. So to find myself standing on the spot and crying the way I was crying, it just completely rocked me. It just completely, pulled the rug underneath of me.
So you mentioned earlier that the treatment that you had for 18 months was for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And that was what the treatment was for 18 months.
So it was post-traumatic stress disorder. It was the whole, because I'd found myself like 4 years before that, I'd got made redundant. So I was going back into a school environment, and it's like, although was part of the leadership team, to try and get back in, it was like I couldn't get back in where no matter how many jobs you applied for, and you just couldn't get back there. And, I got into this school now where the head teacher's saying, she valued my skills, she valued what I was doing. So, I stayed there. I could have gone to another school that wanted me to go and work there. Because I saw the need of her students, I decided to stay there. And then to find myself now in this situation where the one job that I've loved for all these years, now I can't even face going into a school environment. I couldn't trust whether or not I go in a head teacher, whether or not they tell me something, I won't believe them. It was just like the whole thing, like my therapist wanted me to get back to that day I had the meltdown, and she couldn't get, every time she would go anywhere near it, I just would blank out. And it was only, through writing a book, that one line of the book I wrote that, the students who basically have the louder voice, people listen to them instead of listening to the ones who are doing things which are right.
So your therapy lasted for 18 months. During that time, was you working?
No.
So the incident caused you to be off work for 18 months, it was that severe.
It was that I couldn't face, it's like the only thing I knew was teaching, and I just couldn't face going in a classroom. I couldn't face going into a school environment. So fortunately, because I had savings, I lived off my savings, and in the process I thought I've got to be able to find a way of using my skills.
So how did it, you weren't working, but how did it affect other areas of your life during that time?
Oh, it was just like that. The hardest things I have two like they're in their 20s now, 2 sons. And my eldest kept saying, when am I going to go back to work? You know, single parent at home, you know, you've been always the responsible one, going out working, doing this, doing that. And now just saying I can't face going to work. You know, so it was like challenges in terms of, they couldn't understand, especially he couldn't understand. And I think because like, they used to see me with a physical illness, like when I have the lupus I can't walk, so it's like, you know, you justify I'm not at work. But because you couldn't see the fact I was ill, in the sense of, you know, when you're going through stress, you can't see that someone's stressed. You might see the symptoms of the stress, but it's different. And I think that was what was the hardest, is because, you know, it's like I'm a strong person, you know, I would get on and do what needed to be done, and now it's like I'm saying I'm not doing that. So it's like people are sitting there thinking this is out of character in terms of my behaviour. And because it went on for so long, you know, it's like, you know, initially I started off with individual therapy, then they took me into group therapy, then I had like individual therapy again, and then I did mindfulness training. So, you know, I had a whole load of different types of therapy. So at one point I was in like therapy 2 days a week, and then I had a car accident at the beginning of the year, so I had to be a physio. So, you know, it was like 3 days a week I might be in different types of therapy, all trying to get me to the point so that I can feel good about going back out to work.
So during that therapy period, what did you learn or discover about yourself or your past experiences that brought you to that state?
I realised I had let everybody else's needs come in front of my own. So, you know, the analogy that, you know, when you travel on a plane and they tell you to put the mask on yourself first before you put it on anyone else. So that's what I learned. I learned how to look after myself. I learned how to, you know, in terms of my diet, in terms of the importance of exercise. The one thing my therapist really drilled down on me is having someone around that you can talk to and open up to about what you really feel, not like on the surface. You know, when people turn around and say to you, yeah, I'm feeling fine. Don't just say you're feeling fine. Have somebody that you can really say, you know, I'm having a really good day, I'm having a bad day. About going out and mixing with people, and, you know, having some time to do the things you like to do and not always be so much in work. So, you know, it's like looking after your physical well-being, your personal well-being, your social well-being, and how if any one of those is not looked after, then it will impact you.
You went on a journey. You know, what's interesting is when you speak about therapy, because I know some people have a view on therapy. They just won't go to therapy because in their mind it says to them that they're weak. Did you have a view on therapy before you started it?
I think when I first started, I didn't let anyone know I was there. I think it's like, you know, it's that thing about, you know, you can go for a doctor for this. I've been to I've had counselling, you know, I've had other things, but the sheer thought of being in therapy, it's like, nah, I didn't, you know, it was like almost like, because I'm always a strong person, it was almost like to say, well, I'm not as strong as I am, that I'm in therapy. But I think the more then I was in therapy, and the more I grew and people around would see the changes in me, it was like they were thinking, well, what's going on here? And then I would open up and say, well, actually once a week I'm in therapy, and this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm learning. And I think because people then saw that the therapy was doing me good, then I started to embrace, because initially at first I didn't think why I was there. You know, it's like the therapist, the one I started the individual, the 20 hours, it's like the therapist was saying, if I didn't know different, I would say you didn't need to be here. Because, you know, you can put on a face that everything's fine. But as she started to delve underneath the surface and then worked with me, then actually realised, yeah, I needed to be here. And, you know, she said, okay, we'll do 6 weeks and review at the end of 6 weeks. And we reviewed at the end of 6 weeks, and she said, right, we'll review at the end of another 6 weeks. And I ended up having all 20 hours.
So you had to make yourself vulnerable. You had to open up to really receive The therapy.
Yes, yeah.
I have a saying that, someone should make themselves vulnerable, not because they're weak, but because they want to make themselves stronger. And that's what you had to do. Even though you had this strong character, you were someone who's always in control, you reached a point in your life, it seems, where you wasn't in control. And you needed help, but you had to admit that you needed to help, and also embrace that help when it came to you.
Yeah, it was very, I remember my first therapy session. It's like the therapist said that, on the letter it said, yeah, you're here for an hour, but, if we're here for an hour and a half, that's how long we will talk. I need to see exactly, what's going on. And we talked, and probably maybe about an hour into talking, she said to me, Ruth, who do you have help you? And it was just like a really strange question, because I said, yeah, I have my family. She said, no, really help. Who do you really let inside to know who you are? She goes, you tell people what they want to know. And she said to me that, you're being selfish and that you're being dishonest. And when she said those words to me, I'm thinking, those like selfish, those are really like negative traits. I would want someone to turn around and tell me I'm being selfish or dishonest. And she meant I was being selfish because the same way I want to help others, I needed to let others help me. And I was being dishonest because I wasn't telling people how I really felt. And that's when the penny dropped in terms of the life I was living. And that's when I realised, okay, I need the help. That, I can't just go through life with this mask on because you're getting hurt, so if they're going to help me to take off the mask and still feel good about myself and still get the help I need and be in control. I think that was what they taught me, is I can be in control of my life. That, I can decide who I'm going to talk to and who I'm not going to talk to. I can decide, the boundaries that I'm going to have in my life. And I think that was the positive thing, that yes, it was hard work. You're going to places you don't want to go to. Going right back to childhood and looking at how habits formed in childhood and how they impact you in terms of as an adult. So some really painful journey that I had to go through. But in the end, it made me stronger.
I think that's great. I think that you mentioned the word mask, and many people do wear a mask, don't they? Their smile hides the pain that they feel, but they feel they have to present this I am strong persona to the world when inside they could be crumbling. And it seems that's what you went through, and I'm really pleased that you embraced that a therapy. So besides the therapy, what else did you do to try and overcome your post-traumatic stress disorder period?
So I had the therapy, I started to go exercising. So because I got problems with my back and things like that, I had to find a form of exercise I could do. So I started to go swimming, I started to go walking. My diet had changed, so my diet's vegan. And even in terms of the vegan now, I was starting to eat a lot more fresh fruit, raw fruit. So instead of cooking, I'd get up in the morning and I'd have fruit. I'd have more salads. So I think I found, the importance of what I put in my system helped. And then also in terms of rest, making sure at night I try and get to bed at a reasonable hour unless I'm working on a project. And then the other thing, I get up early in the morning now. I can be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I have energy. Where, when I was in work, you can tell every time I get up at 5 o'clock, no, I'd be too tired. So I find, I've got that early morning energy that I can just, when my mind is clear, that I can get up and work. So, you can work more effectively and efficiently at those hours because no one else is around to disturb you. So, lots of areas changed.
So how about your mindset, your personal mindset outside of therapy? How did that change?
Oh, that very much. That was the biggest change. It's I remember when I first started on this journey, my coach said to me that I'm going to tell you that this meltdown you have is going to be your gift. You might not think so now, but I want you to think of this as a gift. And as I went through, the therapy, I went through all the other stuff, then I realised now why he called this was my gift. Because he said, you could have thought about it two ways. You could think this is going to really pull me down and I can't do nothing about it. Or you can think that this is something positive and through this you're going to learn. And because he made me think about it in a positive way, therefore, yes, I went through this journey, but I thought, okay, a gift is something you treasure. And therefore my mindset completely changed, because I realized that I could have thought about this in one way or another. And it's like what I put on it. And it's like now when I go out and, you know, you talk to others and I share my story with others, I say, you know, challenges happen in our life. You know, challenges are part of life, but it's how we respond to them. So we can think, okay, this is something I'm going through. Yes, you've got to go through the challenge, but at the end, it can make you stronger. You know, that if you hadn't gone through this, you know, you meet people in your life that if you hadn't gone through this, you might never meet them. You know, you can impact people's lives, you can inspire them and they can inspire you. So, you know, yes, the challenge, you know, the whole journey, that maze I went through was difficult, but, you know, I've come out the other end a lot stronger. And the main thing is like my mindset now, because I'm so determined now that I'm not going to go back to how I was living. You know, that as hard as those 18 months were, it made me realise that I'm important.
You know, I say to some people sometimes that when they go through some life experiences, some people just go through their life experiences and their challenges and they don't come out the other end, but you didn't just go through it, you grew through it. You grew through that experience, which is why now you're at the stage you're at now, and you're at a stage now, I believe, where you're sharing your experiences with other people and helping people who may be suffering from similar situations like yourself, stress of life and stress of work. Is that correct?
That's correct. So it's very, very much, I think, like, you know, up until a year ago, the people I was out with in terms of the business world, they didn't know the real reason why I was out there. Because I didn't want to talk about it, you know. So it's like I was setting up and like going through the phases. But I went away to one event and this lady, she was talking about, you know, her own personal challenges that she went through. So the next time I had an event and I spoke, I shared like the real reason why I was out of work and why I was doing what I was doing. And that opened the door for people thinking, we knew there was more to your story. But the more I started to share and the more people saw the transformation that was taking place in me and the change, then they encouraged me more to talk about what, you know, the past Ruth and the new Ruth. Because they just said, we can't believe you're the same person. And, you know, it's like when I'm out now at meetings, people are thinking, you've just completely changed in front of our eyes. And I think it's, you know, because anything I do, I put 100% into it. So, you know, if I was in therapy, I put 100% into the therapy. Now that, you know, I'm out and I realise now I can help others, you know, I'll put 100% into that, because that's one of my bigger goals is, if I knew then what I know now, I might be able to prevent part of the stuff I went through. And therefore, if I can stop others from going down the same road I went down, and I can stop them from, you know, impacting their relationships the way and having that additional stress and, you know, get up in the morning tired and all of that. If I could share my journey and then stop someone from going down that path, then it's like my journey would have, you know, it's yes, hard as it is, but it's impacting the lives of somebody else.
You've actually started on an entrepreneurship journey. You now have a business.
Yes.
Where that's what you do. You aim to share your story and empower other people who may have gone through similar life circumstances.
Yeah, very much so. My business is called Listening to Your Voice, coaching, training. It's like I use the analogy, my logo for my business is a butterfly. And I talk with others that, you know, that's very much how we go through. You know, you start off with the egg stage and, you know, you're not sure what that's going to be. Then you go to the caterpillar, which is the feeding stage. But then the chrysalis, that's the main part, when you put the cocoon around yourself, and that's when all the changes take place. And when all those changes take place and the butterfly emerges, and when this butterfly emerges, you never would imagine from this egg that such beauty was there. And, you know, that's what I do when I work with my clients. You know, I just take them on that journey. When I do my training, I take people on that journey that, you know, you might have started here at the beginning of the training session here, but by the time you leave in those 2 hours, that something must have taken place. You know, and the good thing is, in this journey, I've been able to write a book about, you know, being changed from, you know, having the meltdown to what I'm doing now, and just being able to impact and change people's lives.
I was about to ask you about that book. What's the book called?
Say Yes to New Opportunities, Be Motivated to Learn.
And that book stems solely out of your experiences of your post-traumatic stress disorder
Yeah.
and your therapy afterwards?
Yeah, it starts off with me packing boxes when I got made redundant and not showing which direction my life's going to be, going working in another school, and things weren't working out, and then having the meltdown. So very much about the meltdown, thinking my life had fallen apart and what I'm doing now. And I remember when the book, like, how you've got the back of the book when they need to write down, and the publishers wrote how I had this meltdown and thought my life had fallen apart, but this is what I'm doing now. And like, people are thinking, Ruth, do you really want that at the back of your book? People are going to pick it up and see it. And I said, well, they'll read it in the book. So if the publishers think that this being on the back will help others to know that this book came out of a really low moment of my life and it will help others, then I will, I don't have a problem with it being there. So
since you have had your PSD and you've been speaking to people, has it been your experience that you found a number of people who are suffering from stress at work to a point of where it could lead them to a breakdown?
Oh, very much so. I think the more I opened up, the more people could sit down and think, you know what, I can see where you were, how I'm similar to how you are. And it's like, maybe I need to go get the help. Maybe I might not want to go into therapy. So, part of this journey now is I've put together like an online training course, because I realise people need the help, but they don't want to go to therapy. So therefore, if I can share my journey and the steps I've taken to help them, then that will give them a resource that they can use. And the view is then that they will then see that, okay, this is like the starting point, and now, okay, let me then go and get the help I need. And it might be a coach, it might be therapist, it might be even going sitting down and talking with family members or, someone else, but just to have someone you can trust and that will hold you accountable, that you can talk to. So that's the aim, is just to allow people to say, you know what, it's fine to make yourself vulnerable, but do it in a safe environment. I think that's the key thing, is that you need to be in a safe environment when you open up, because you want to know when you open up that what you talk about is going to be held in confidence. And I think that's why, like, sometimes people will put their mask on because they're scared, okay, who's going to take my story and where they're going to take it to. So I think that's elements of trust. So, it took time initially for me to trust the therapist. But once I trusted her, then she was able to do the work with me.
Absolutely. I think therapy's played a huge part, but I also think you taking control and you changing your mindset, changing your perspective and doing things also helped to bring you to where you are. I think your story is absolutely amazing. You've made a 360 degree transition. It's clear to see. In conclusion, someone watching this video who may be suffering from stress through work or any other aspect of their life, what words would you leave with them?
I'd say, if you feel that you're stressed, go get some help. Go find someone that you can talk with. So make that start. Find someone around you who you can open up with. Don't turn around and say that I'm feeling fine. Share what those emotions are in an honest way. And once you put all those things in place, then you can start to take the positive steps towards where you want to go, and then have that success. It might be changing jobs, it may be staying where you are, it might be, the hours that you're working, but you decide the quality of life you want. And I think that's the thing, that too long we give our life to someone else, where we need to take back control. And if we take back control and put the correct boundaries in place, then it can help minimize our stress.
And I think a key message is don't keep it in, don't hold it in.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make yourself vulnerable in order to seek help.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think especially if you're a really strong person and people are always coming to you for help, then for you now to need the help, it's like, you're changing roles. And I think that's, for myself, that was what was hard, because I've always been the strong person, but in this case I wasn't. So it's like, if you're that person who's always strong and others depend on you, then even more so than when you're having challenges, you need to go get the help you need.
Fantastic. I think that's some great advice there, Ruth. And I think anybody watching this who is going through some similar circumstances from what you went through will be appreciate your openness and your honesty about your journey. I wish you every success in your entrepreneurship and your coaching business, and may your book say yes to new opportunities, inspire many people. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your story, and I wish you every success for the future.
Thank you very much.